And it's funny to watch people melt down over this. I guess I had my AI midlife crisis just a little before they did. Like I had mine about a year ago where I just had an existential crisis where it hit me hard. I was stunned. I was like reeling because I realized that many of the things that I thought that I kind of like my value, my sense of self-worth, my identity was tied up in my ability to do things like memorize long things or generate long things or whatever. It's all just BS now. Like computers do it way better, right? So like that was tough. I think a lot of other people haven't gone through that yet, so my blog really touched the nerve.
Welcome to the Software Misadventures podcast. We are your hosts, Ronak and Guan. As engineers, we are interested in not just the technologies, but the people and the stories behind them. So on this show, we try to scratch our own itch by sitting down with engineers, founders, and investors to chat about their path, lessons they have learned, and of course, the misadventures along the way.
Awesome. Steve, so you're very well known for your rants, the Google Plus rant, I think being the most popular one. And I would categorize it as very insightful and suitable for the chili emoji for the spiciness of it. So me and Ronak, we also rant, but we do not have like the near, skill level. So maybe some pro tips to get us started. Like, what makes a really good rant in your opinion?
A really good rant. Well, you got to start off by being really frustrated, ideally at a coworker or a team that's not giving you an API. And then you get really, really hammered one night. And then, the rest usually just comes naturally.
Love that. And when did this sort of start? If you can take us back a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, like I kind of started before there was like anything like blogging or anything like that. I was doing it at Amazon, okay? Because when I started Amazon, there was only like 250 people in the whole company, like including customer service and stuff. It was very small, and so the engineering team was only like I don't know, like maybe 50 or 80 people, and so as they grew, like I knew everybody personally, right? And as we grew, like there was a large contingent of people that was using Java, but they were just like having to build really comical, really dumb stuff back in the early days of Java. And I started getting kind of mad that we weren't using better languages. We were using like Perl and PHP and just a bunch of right. So I started just kind of like soapboxing internally. Right to like 150, 200 people. It eventually grew to like 700 or 800 people. Eventually, I left. I went to Google. I brought him with me. The CTO, Werner Vogels, he like called me up and said that I needed to remove one of them because it gave away a little too much confidential information. So fine, I took that one out, and I published the rest of them. And nothing happened. Nothing happened for 6 months. So my biggest piece of advice to you is like if you're going to write something big, like write it, but then don't expect anything to happen for a few months. It takes time for people to like absorb, right? 6 months later, like on the nose, all of a sudden people start walking up to me at Google going, I read your blog. And I'm like, well, which one? And they'd like name one. Oh, okay, weird. And then somebody else the same day would be like, I read your blog. And I'm like, yeah, which one? And they named a different one. And I'm like, what's happening, right? And it was that somebody had found them and they made Hacker News and people were reading all of them, all the old Amazon rants, right? So like at that point, I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll keep going.
So that part's pretty cool. And I would say typically a lot of things, I think most engineers rant, but most people rant in private on calls, which are either not recorded or people don't write about it. In many of the posts/rants that you have, and sometimes your YouTube, TikTok series too, you're unafraid to share your opinions and sometimes name names as well. And typically, at least when I was starting out in tech, I was told Silicon Valley or tech community in general is a very small world. So just make sure you don't piss anyone off, even if you don't like them. I was like, okay, that's a fair piece of advice. Now, in your case, when you're sharing these opinions, a lot of people tend to agree with the opinions you have, but the people you're sharing the opinion of may not necessarily feel that way. So I'm curious, was this a concern ever in terms of when you share your thoughts, or you're like, you know what, who cares? Let's just share.
I mean, yeah, almost every single post I ever did at Google pissed off one VP or another, right? And they'd grumble at me about it, but they wouldn't censor it. But I'm gonna say something that I've never said before, but I'm becoming more and more convinced of it as I get like old, which is that companies, they really are people, okay, or they're very person-like.
Yeah.
And they can have a personality, right? That's kind of a reflection of their leader plus their culture plus maybe their domain. And I think that as we move forward in this world where oligarchs are having more and more and more power and sway over governments, the only people that are powerful enough that we can turn to are corporations, right? And most of them, they don't talk. They're secretive, right? They're all like a bunch of cloak and dagger stealing around in alleyways because they got, gun shy from lawsuits or whatever, right? Defamation or whatever, right? Plus your brand is always in free fall. I don't know if you guys know this, but like Google's brand, when it was peaked, it was like early 2000s. And I was talking to the public relations folks and they were like, yeah, brands always decline basically over time. I don't know. Amazon might be an exception to that, right? They've done really, really well with their brand, but Google, people decided they were evil, 10 years in. They weren't trying to be, I don't think.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that companies need to talk more about what they do and what happens inside of them and the learnings that we can all get from each other that we don't share with each other. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that people are so afraid to talk about the stuff that we all experience every single day in our corporate jobs. We don't share. And you know what? It is time for sharing because tech is under attack because they're considered to have a monopoly on information, unbiased true stuff. And that attack is going to catch us real off guard unless tech gets together. And right now it's all background. I'm serious. You guys know this is happening, right? So I'm proud of the fact that I speak up when people are doing stupid stuff, and I think more people need to do it. And you just need to if you've got a voice, get it out there, and if you've got something meaningful to say, make it funny, and then people will listen.
So,
sorry, you really got me ranting there, but that's brand new thought for me, right?
Very well said. And in terms of the making it funny part, so I think this is unique to your writing style plus speaking style too, and I think that's what, at least in my opinion, makes a lot of difference. Where if I or someone else just goes online and says a bunch of angry things at people or at things that they are disagreeing with, a lot of people wouldn't be happy, even the ones who would agree with it, because they would just see the anger. But then when someone reads your posts, they tend to always nod, at least I do, and I'm also laughing while reading it or listening to you. How did you develop that unique style?
Look, you got to be able to make yourself laugh, right? I mean, genuine, you got to think of something that's so funny that you would burst out laughing out loud. And you're like, I could never say that. And that's the germ of your idea right there. Okay. It's okay, how can I say this and get away with it? Right. And it's a bit of an art, but I mean, you've got to practice it all day long. You got to, right. Just see the humorous side of things and sort of remember it. And then when it comes time, be bold, right? Say the funny thing. It's rough these days, right? But, I don't know. For some reason, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in the corporate world, right?
So when I have those ideas where in my head, right, I think of something and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm the funniest person ever. And then, 30 minutes later, I go and I write it down and then I try to, position it. I'm like, okay, maybe not the funniest person I know. Is there a process you use in terms of, so you said practice that all day, but more concretely,
it's a process, right? You get a bottle of wine and no, I stopped. I actually quit drinking in 2016, but no, I guess there's the Mozarts out there who already have it well formed in their head and they just write it down and it's nice and clean, and then there's the Beethovens that just scratch it out over and over and over and over again until it's right. Okay. I think most of us are like the Beethovens, right? You know, you sit down and it's not right, but you got a sketch of it. You know, there's some jokes in there, but some of them aren't landing or they're in the wrong order or whatever. And so like, it's, you know, the writing process is pure generation and you're just trying to enjoy yourself and make a bunch of interesting points. The editing process can take months. I have blogs that I'm sitting on that I started writing last year that I still haven't published yet because they're not right yet, you know? And you can tell when I'm rushed and when people are rushing me out and they got to get a blog post out, it's not going to be as high quality. But when I can take my time and I can think it through and research it and make sure the jokes will still make me laugh 2-3 months later, I'll pick it up and ha ha ha, this is good. Why didn't I publish this? Oh yeah, because I said that. And so, you know, you go through this process, you know, right? Look, if you're not saying something that's like controversial, if you're not saying something that divides people actually fairly evenly, then you're not interesting. Right? Unless you're teaching them something, right? Which is okay. But like if you want to be interesting, you gotta say stuff that's like kind of like you're not even sure if you 100% agree with it. Right? But you know, you got to be, you know, kind of thinking outside the box, and also, you know, I don't know. Yeah, but that's the important thing, right? Is if you can go back and reread it later and laugh, then you know you got gold.
I like that. Do you have these like archetypes in your head, or like say proxies to friends or something, such that you know that when they read this they would disagree, or like when they read this they would agree? Interesting.
I do.
That's how you form sort of like a 50-50 split, sort of.
Yeah. And I actually learned that trick from like, you know, writers like Stephen King and Neil Stephenson from their books. Like Stephen King's On Writing is really good. Kurt Vonnegut did a really good one on it. Neil Stephenson came to Google and talked to us for like an hour and a half, right? That was a treat. There were like, I don't know, 40 or 50 of us in the room, you know, and, you know, I got tips from all of them. Of course, the number one tip from every writer is write. Right? Get up in the morning and write. And that's how you get good at it. And there's a lot of truth to that. But there's also a lot of value in picking a person and writing the post for them. One person. And maybe having like a peanut gallery of other people that you know disagree, and you kind of just like think about how they're going to take it too, right? I absolutely do that. I mean, like I can even name the people that I wrote the last like 5 blog posts for. I won't, but I could.
Like, how do you find those people? Like, how do you, like out of all your friends or like, you know, people that you know, like how do you find the archetypes?
You know, I talk to a lot of people through the industry, and a lot of my old friends are like super, super high up there now, you know, like they've got, you know, 20 or 30,000 people in their org, you know, and massive, you know, Fortune 10 companies or whatever. And it's funny because the woes and their trials and tribulations are pretty much identical to the couple of 100 people companies and the Series B startups. And everybody's in the same boat right now, right? So listening to them talk, I think, wow, I could tell a story about something I saw here, and I know it applies to their org too, right? So I'll just kind of like poke the bear a little bit. Like I'm going to do this on stage in Las Vegas in 2 weeks. I'm going to stand up and poke the bear a little bit.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm giving a keynote at this conference. So, well, yeah.
So
I don't know. Where were we?
We're talking about the art of writing. So you mentioned some of these books, like Stephen King's On Writing. I actually have it in my bookshelf. I haven't read it, but I will.
It's great. It's really good.
Are there any other resources that you've come across that people could refer to?
I mean, you know, I've tried, right? But I mean, no. You know, I mean, like ultimately, it's like that Twitter exchange with the guy who wrote the worst movie of all time, The Room, right? What's his name? And somebody asked, "Hey, I want to start writing a screenplay. What should I do?" And he replied, "Start." Right? I mean, this is like fundamentally like, well, you know, everybody says that everybody who's successful in any sort of a entertainment or whatever kind of business has been doing it for a long time. Look at you guys. You guys enjoy immense success with this podcast, and you've been doing it for a long time now, as long as high school. Right? Time really flies by. Well, I've been blogging now for, I mean, like, I guess gosh, probably 20, 25, close to 25 years. And right. And so like everybody tells you this: persistence, patience, just keep it up. And Neil Stephenson said this too. He told us, he said, look, your first novel is going to be a failure, and your second novel and your third one, but eventually you're going to write a hit. And people are going to want more of it. And if you've got nothing, if it's your first novel, they're going to be like, oh, later, right? But if you've got like an oeuvre, then they'll go and they'll make their way through it, and they'll find value in stuff that maybe they didn't see before. It's really encouraging, but I know it's also discouraging because you're like, oh man, I can't become an overnight success. But and nobody on YouTube, nobody out there is, right? That you got to build it up little by little.
What kept you going when, in that 6 months of like publishing all these blog posts, right? Which I assume after you publish it, you're like, this is pretty fucking great. And then just crickets of like no sort of, validation or no feedback from, anywhere. Like what kept you like keep at it?
Oh, you mean when I published all the Amazon ones, like when I joined Google?
Or just in general, in like when there is not a lot of feedback on your writings?
I've gone through a lot of dry spells. Writing one of my blogs is so much work. It really is. I mean, you have no idea. The funny thing is I need to be able to, one of my rules is that I have to be able to basically write the entire blog in one sitting. And if I fail, I will go back and rewrite the whole thing in one sitting. So it has to flow. Now, during the editing process, they usually expand by 40 or 50%. But because I'm cutting stuff, but then other people who are helping me review it are adding stuff. Believe it or not, it's not me usually. But yeah, I'm just like, I feel like everything that I say has to be new, which is stupid. I'm doing it wrong. Like, to be really successful, you're supposed to say the same thing over and over again, right? That's how, demagogues work, right? But I prefer to like not say the same thing over and over again because you can always go back and look at it. And instead, I try to find new angles and nuances to things, and that can take a long time. So I maybe only publish once or twice a year, of anything serious. But what keeps me going is I eventually get pissed off enough about something. I'm like, all right, time to right, and I'm riled, and that's when I know I'm gonna write that it's gonna be good, right? Because I'm heated. Right, but I'm also kind of snarky, so then the jokes are going to start flying, right? Because I've seen him, and so that's the formula, right? Is you think about it, you let it rattle around, you can let it bake, and then at some point you get yourself worked up into you're in LLM generation mode, and you whip the whole thing out at once.
So if we took an example of, let's say, one of your recent posts, Death of a Junior Developer, for example, which is an amazing post. We'll link that in the show notes. Not that we need to, but we'll still do, and people should check it out. If we had to take that one, like what did it look like to write that one? How long did you sit on it? How long did it take to write it completely? And then what does editing look like?
Yeah, I started that one I started realizing what I wanted to write about maybe in February, and it didn't come out till May. So it was a good 3 months on that one. And I am so glad that I researched this one a little more than usual, like in the sense that I went to a bunch of colleagues that I have a lot of respect for, and found actually that some of them were like vehemently in favor, and some of them were just like, nope. Right, so that was cool, right? Because I was like, "Ooh, like I think both of these people are really smart, and they disagree on this, so we're on to something here, right?" But I mean, like, it really made people mad. Like, there's some YouTuber, right? That painstakingly read out all the words very slowly, and then got about halfway through and started judging it. But the funny thing was, his followers got into this heated argument about whether we matter or not as human beings. I mean, that's how fundamental the point is that I touched on. I mean, come on, seriously. And they're like, no, we matter, which is really funny because I am definitely in the we don't matter camp, right? So that could actually be part of what's the resistance. But I'm basically saying, yeah, the old way of doing stuff, it's gone. Just let it go. Let the LLM do the work for you now. You're staring at a higher level. You're not swimming, you're driving a boat. And people are like, no, that just means we don't matter. And it's funny to watch people melt down over this. I guess I had my AI midlife crisis just a little before they did. I had mine about a year ago where I just had an existential crisis where it hit me hard. I was stunned. I was like, reeling because I realized that many of the things that I thought that that I kind of like my value, my sense of self-worth, my identity was tied up in my ability to do things like memorize long things or generate long things or whatever. It's all just BS now. Like computers do it way better, right? So like that was tough. I think a lot of other people haven't gone through that yet. So my blog really touched the nerve. But I went through a lot of editing on that one. We even took votes on the title. We weren't sure if the title was going to be too harsh. Gene Kim, right, who's kindly offered to let me talk at the Enterprise Technology Leadership Summit in Vegas in 2 weeks, which is going to be awesome. He's the one that contributed. Like, it was chatting with him that I realized this is hitting the whole industry. And that's when I realized, oh, wow, okay, so this is big. And you know what? Like, the funny thing is a lot of people came out. People were calling me. Friends, like old friends, like retired friends were calling me. And I figured out the pattern. It was their kids are graduating from college and they were getting discouraged by my blog post, right? And they're mad, right? But the funny thing is, like, a bunch of other people called too, all right? We got calls from some very large, very, very large companies where you'd hear their name and go, oh, that's money. And they have, thousands and thousands of developers. And a couple of them came to us and said, yeah, they've been seeing signs of this as well. Right? We got confirmation. So there's a huge change afoot. And I was able to kind of like get in just at the right time and shove people's nose in it.
I think that blog definitely had an impact on a lot of people. In fact, I've forwarded that blog to a few of my friends who have their kids or someone they know who's about to enter undergrad. And they were essentially trying to figure out, or at least, let's just say, until last year, their plan was, obviously, my kid's going to do computer science, or the kid thought they would do computer science. And now, when they saw something like this, or they just see LLMs in general, they're like, well, does it still make sense? Should I still go on this route that I thought for the past 4 years that I should be doing? So when you get some of these calls, at least for the camp of people who have, let's say, their kids trying to go to school, what do you tell them?
Well, I'm never going to discourage someone from going into computer science. I mean, it's an amazing discipline, and it'll give you the foundation that you need to be a great, prompt engineer, doing chat programming. But I mean, look at you saw the graph in there from Indeed.com, right, of software engineering jobs, and basically the jobs come when there's money, and there's no money right now.
Yeah.
Okay, like there was an anomaly. I'm going to be talking about this at Vegas, but the zero interest rate policy and the $1 trillion stimulus package during COVID injected so much money into the economy that everybody had money for engineers, and it caused all kinds of weird knock-on effects in the industry that I'm going to talk about. But like there were jobs aplenty, yeah. And now that that's over, and moreover, right, like, yeah, AI provided a bit of a bubble, a bit of a boost, but except in coding assistance, where we're seeing tremendous gains from AI, where else is it?
Oh, it's just
like, I know that's a silly thing to say, but we know it's right around the corner. But like, still, investors are asking this question. Yeah, where's the money? Because it's been a year and a half. Anyway,
on these lines, so when it comes to publishing posts at, let's say, when you were at Google, companies that size typically have a policy for what you can write on their company's website. You can publish on your own blog, and you say, opinions are my own. The last few blogs that you have published are on Sourcegraph's website. And there's a marked difference. Like, if I'm reading your post versus a post someone else wrote, all of them are good. Yours is way more entertaining. No offense to anyone else. Is there a policy at Sourcegraph that lets Steve publish the post when it comes out, or do your posts go through the same review policy that others might go through as well?
Yeah. If I just said I'm going to post it, they would post it, right? But Sourcegraph are my friends, and I want to make sure my friends aren't caught blindsided. In fact, we've got one right now that was it's a really, really interesting blog. I mean, my God, it's probably one of my most interesting of all time. but it's so sensitive that I basically have to rewrite about 3.5 or 4 pages out of 12. It's a big one.
Oh, wow.
Just because we want to make sure that we're sensitive.
I want to spend a couple more minutes on the writing part, and we can move on to a lot of other topics. You mentioned when you write a post, you want to write that in almost one sitting, at least the major ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I was gonna make a joke about, getting handcuffs. Like, I was like, okay, where are you getting the handcuffs? Like, to cuff yourself to the chair? Or is like, do you lock yourself in like a room and then throw away the keys? Like, oh man, stole my joke, Ron. Like, no, cool. Alright, sorry. Continue, please.
Are there handcuffs involved? Let's just ask that first. Sorry. Many times it happens to me where something gets stuck in my head where unless I do that thing, I don't want to do anything else. Makes my family unhappy at times. Is that a similar situation here where you have this blog post or you're just so riled up that you need to write it down? So unless you do this, everything else takes a backseat?
I kind of work myself into a frenzy, if that makes any sense. So like I'll set aside time and be like, I think I'm going to try to do the blog post this week. That one. I've usually got 3 or 4 at any given time that need to be written. Like right now I have 2 drafts that need to be rewritten and finished, right? And plus I got 2 more ideas. And so I'll pick one that seems promising. I'll go back and read it, see if any of the jokes kind of make me laugh, if I'm into it, right? And eventually, maybe I won't, and I'll just go program or whatever. But if I can kind of catch that feel of, yeah, I remember now, those jerks, and then at that point, I'm hooked, right? And so like when I say one sitting, I mean like the reason I do it in one sitting, it's the whole, what is it, the Edgar Allan Poe quote, where he basically said like a good story has to be readable in one sitting.
Yeah.
I actually, and so if I type pretty fast, and so if I write it in one sitting, then it usually winds up being readable in one sitting for most people. And I find that that's a good, I don't know, it's a good forcing function, right? So that I don't write forever.
And also that you actually write and finish.
Yep.
And one last thing on this bit about just writing and rants. Have you ever experienced any backlash? Well, not people getting pissed off, but them getting in your way in terms of you want to do something, work somewhere, convince people, but something's getting in your way because of some of the things you've said.
Sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, there are going to be a lot of people who in this industry who just don't like me. And that's going to be pretty normal if your name is known, and there's going to be some percentage of people that don't like you.
That's true.
And that's totally fine. And if it's over my blog, then yeah, they can get, who knows, right? But I mean, like by and large, people are pretty respectful in our industry. And also, I would say that my blogs have done more to open doors for me. I mean, like, I've kind of developed a thick skin over the hate mail and the angry letters and all that. I mean, that was something that bothered me a lot more like 15, 20 years ago, right? But now I just realized it's like, you could put out the best video game of all time and get a bunch of hate mail. And I'm like, oh, right? I mean, like I saw that happen with things like Tears of the Kingdom or whatever. It's like, oh, I get it. There's just a lot of angry people out there, right? So you don't let that part bother you. But yeah, I don't know. It's yeah.
That's fair.
I had a follow up for the, I know I'm not in the group being able to vote on the titles of the posts, but I love the AI Midlife Crisis as like the title. Would you be interested in like diving a little bit more into that? Like what?
Into my AI midlife crisis? For real? Yeah, I mean, I guess, sure. I mean, yeah, LLMs are terrifying, right? I mean, like, I don't think people have really, most people have pieced it together yet. But I remember hearing, I don't know, 4 years ago that like there were 500 million users of this chatbot in China. And this is before LLMs, right? This is with good models, but definitely not transformers. and I heard I heard it's quite addictive, or it was, right? You got 500 million people addicted to a chat bot. That's going to happen here like within a year, right? Because OpenAI is even warning people. And it's like it's a combination of like I worry very, very, very much about the social consequences. People's bank accounts are going to get drained, right? Because somebody's going to get a phone call. A banker's going to get a phone call from somebody who claims to be you, and it sounds just like you, and blah blah blah, right? Or you're going to get a phone call from a family member or whatever. And this is terrifying because it could start happening like today, yeah. So I mean, like the midlife crisis has more been like a kind of a rolling snowball. Where first I realized I don't matter, right? Our brains are just neural nets. And then, I mean, absolutely, you can have beliefs beyond this, of course, and can and do, right? But still, our brains aren't really particularly special. We'll be able to engineer them, right? So that's a tough hurdle for a lot of people to get over. And then when you look at what's going to happen to our culture, to things that we cherish and hang on to, even hardened like progressives, I think, are not totally prepared for how much that's going to change. Maybe I mean, like people call me a doomer though, right? So I don't know.
Um, did you come up with any sort of solution, including buying a motorbike to kind of counter react this midlife crisis?
So like, I mean, like just to give you one concrete example, I'm I'm consider myself to be very, very good at arranging music for guitar, whether it's electric guitar, acoustic guitar, whatever. I can play almost anything. Like at one point I was playing all 24 Paganini's violin caprices on a steel string guitar, that kind of thing. Hundreds and hundreds of pages of transcriptions, right? And as soon as LLMs came out, I was like, oh, well, that's done, right? No more of that. Like, that's just stupid because a model will be able to do it. You just give them a bunch of examples and be like, give me a good transcription, give me a good arrangement. It's just a little bit of prompt engineering. Like that skill that I developed over all those years is just stupid now. Right? And it's like, so I don't do it at all. I threw all my, right, throw it all away. I'd love to train a model. I'd love to keep doing it, cause like and use prompt engineering to kind of make it my own, music or arrangement or whatever. But ultimately, all the clever work of mapping fingerings and voices and doing inversions and stuff like that, the model's going to do that, right? So just basically a lot of things that are kind of pattern matching or kind of like almost tedious that I got really good at in my life. I wouldn't even do now. Like, why would you do it? You guys look really depressed, so maybe I should talk about something
Um,
happy.
I think so. We are expecting a baby in a couple months, and
Ooh, congrats.
thank you. Some of these, on similar lines, when I think about AI, LLMs, and all the pieces you said that we have come to cherish as part of our culture, I do think about that, and then I find myself without any answers, and then I put my hands up in there. It's like, what am I gonna do? Let's just roll with it. Um,
That's right. That's right. Roll with it. Big wave coming in, surf it.
so eventually, just at least in my head right now, the way I am making peace with it is humans somehow figure out a way to evolve with circumstances changing. This is one of the circumstances, maybe a bigger one than others. And where some of the skills mattered till now, which may not be relevant anymore, like memorizing stuff, for example. Like this I don't know about many people growing up, but at least back in India when we were growing up, the kid who remembered names, the kid who remembered numbers, the kid who could do some of these things, like, oh, I can look at that car's number plate and know exactly whose car that is. Like these kind of stupid games used to matter in a way, but at this point, like memory,
Hmm.
do you care? Like, look
Yeah.
it up, make it generate.
I can recite pi to still recite pi to 50 decimal places because I learned it in fifth grade.
Exactly. So like these kind of things may not matter anymore, but I guess there will be different things that will matter, similar to not having to worry about swimming, like you said, but riding the board, and what that looks like
That's
will be
right.
different.
We're leveling up. We're leveling up. That's what's happening. Like I said before, we were swimming and now we're driving a boat.
Yeah. So you're not just driving the boat; you're building one too. Uh, Talking about building AI products some time back. So you joined Sourcegraph, I think, towards the end of 2022, if I remember it correctly. You joined as head of engineering, and then you transitioned to being an individual contributor working on Cody, which is Sourcegraph's AI code assistant. Can you tell us a little more about that transition?
Sure. It's not the first time I've done transitions like that in my career. I worked my way up at Amazon at one point to a senior manager, and then just handed it off to one of my directs because she was enjoying it more than I was. Right. There's a lot of people side of management that a lot of people thrive on, and they love it, and they want to mentor people, and they want to guide their careers, and blah blah blah. For me, I've done that for a long time, and for me, it's these days it's more about what can I build and how fast can I build it, right? And it would have been fine. I would have been fine to stay in the head of engineering role, except that AI was so new and so different, and I was doing so much non-engineering stuff in my role that I was starting to feel like I was never going to catch up, and I started getting worried, right? Because, like, for example, I never could have written "Death of a Junior Developer," that post, had I not made that transition and been coding like the whole first half of this year as an actual engineer, like helping us get
Yeah.
the product out. And I'm so happy I did, right? And now I can see where it's going in a way that I never would have been able to see that in a management leadership role. Now, will I go back into leadership someday? That maybe, possibly, right? But with this AI stuff, because like you said, we're building the boat. It is the time of my life, and I'm not exaggerating in the slightest. I thought about this. I've had some pretty darn good times in my life, but this is it. This is the best in terms of just my professional career. Having a lot of fun, right? Because like I blogged about this a long time ago. I think it was called Dreaming in Browser Swamp or something like that. But it was basically like I was talking about this feedback loop that you get into when you're building an IDE or an editor or something where as you build it, you're making yourself faster, and it's so addictive. Yeah, and that's what we're doing it. We're doing it with Cody now. And everything that we do is wiring up this deeper and deeper, integration with the LLM, and there's nothing like it, right? You're just like you're running. It's like you're in a personal hovercraft or something, and you wonder where's it gonna lead? Where's it gonna go? Because not only are the engineering, the tools, and the protocols and stuff getting better, the models themselves are also getting way better, really fast because of the competition. And so, probably this time yet next year, it'll be commonplace to have models and workflows that span big graphs where you've got to get, an application built and the tests and the CI/CD, and you got to get it deployed and maybe even look at the logs. And we're finally at a point where you can expect a lot of that stuff to get done for you in a couple of passes with the tools that we'll have. With a couple of years after that, right? I mean, this is what I'm saying. What happens to all the? I mean, like anybody who's doing old style programming,
Gotta become a chop engineer. So
gotta go do chop.
there's a lot of things I want to dive a little deeper into.
Sure.
Before we go there, you said just building Cody is like you having the time of your life. What's different about building AI products than it is to build something else? And you've built a lot of things in your career.
I mean, like it's the look. It's like driving. Like the number of red lights that you hit has a big impact on your sort of perception of
Absolutely.
the ride, right?
Yeah.
And like when I was programming in the 90s, if you got stuck on something, you could expect that it might take you days to weeks to get it figured out, because you'd have to go look in books or try things or work with colleagues or whatever, right? And so it was like we were in slow motion, and it's gradually beginning faster. Google search made it a lot easier to find stuff, and then Stack Overflow made it like even easier. Like you start asking people stuff and getting answers. Each one of those was a big accelerator, yeah? And each one of them made programming more fun, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, like, if you went through any of those transformations, and cloud computing, I think, made programming more fun in a way. I mean, it's a pain, but it was a lot more fun than running. I had my own computer in a data center in downtown Seattle, and when my game would go down, sometimes it was because the computer like wouldn't reboot, and I had to like go in the middle of the night and get a key card and reboot a server on the 13th floor of this horrible hot building. I mean, cloud computing was a real level up for us,
Uh-huh.
right? And this is no different, right? This is like, wow, this is a huge level up. It's a toy. It's a fun toy. It's like you can make it do things, and you're like, well, I've been doing this for 6 months now. I still didn't know it could do these things, you know? So that's kind of like where I'm at right now. That's why I think it's like time of my life. It's like because programmers, we like to build things that people use, build things that have an impact, and that gives us that dopamine cycle, right? And so if you're speeding that up, it's getting more addictive.
Speaking of that history, so you were actually retired before coming back to Sourcegraph, and
Yeah.
you mentioned before you've transitioned from like management to IC. I'm curious, like, what are some of the skills that are really useful in just picking up like a completely new domain, right? Like all this stuff didn't exist, right? Like the last time that you were like, like doing coding. So then like, yeah, like how do you go about when diving into like a completely new domain? Like what do you do?
There's an interesting question behind your question. I feel like lurking there, right? Which is that,
Please help me. I'm very bad at questions. So yes, let's hear
well, I
it.
mean, like it's related to something we talked about earlier, right? Which is if I'm going into software engineering, should I be going into software engineering, right? Um, so I guess let me just make absolutely sure. State your question one more time. Make sure I'm going to answer the right one.
Sorry.
Can you,
When you go into a new domain, like building an
right.
AI product now with Cody, like how do you go about picking up the new skills that are relevant to building it?
Yeah. When AI came out, a lot of the folks, that I worked with didn't want to have anything to do with it. Like they just they weren't interested.
This is
And I
people
think
outside
that's
Sourcegraph or at Sourcegraph?
both, both. And because maybe it's a misconception. They didn't know that it wasn't like right a bunch of PyTorch anymore. It was there was engineering involved now. But for whatever reason, a lot of people feel like the entry into this new domain is actually so steep that they're scared of it, or they're worried, or they're just putting it off. And so, like seriously, I mean, like getting into a new domain, I mean, the best thing you can do is be young. I'll tell you that right now. It's harder for me. Like, I'm in my mid-50s now. And so, like, when I got to learn a new programming language, I can't just, like, read the book in 2 hours and, like, know the programming language like I could 20 years ago. So that helps. Like, just spend the time while you're, while you're young, learn as much as you can. But seriously, I mean, like, don't be afraid of new domains. I mean, we're all kind of reinventing our jobs kind of all the time anyway, and this is necessitating that we all reinvent our jobs as prompt engineers. Yeah, even if you're doing regular programming, if you're gonna have to do a fair amount of prompt engineering from now on, right? So how do you learn it? Well, I mean, gosh, there's so many more resources now than there used to be, right? I mean, you go on, but what I would do? I'd use Chop to figure it out. I'd go into Emacs or ChatGPT or whatever, go into Cody, and I'd start asking there. Because why bother with Google searches anymore? You can get summaries from the AI, right? The AI knows how to even like present it to you at your level. You can say, I'm a complete newbie, or I actually know a similar domain. Can you like compare it to that? So like the answer to your question is different than it was a year ago. How you ramp up in a new domain is you go ask the LLM about it. That's my opinion. It'll make you a better engineer, right? Because there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of tricks. You know what? There's a lot of people out there today who still possibly listening to this podcast. Yes, you, who think that like Chop is not a thing because they asked the LLM to write some tests for them, and the tests were wrong, and therefore LLMs are dumb. Which is just like saying, I did a Google search and it didn't come up with the right answer, so Google's dumb, right? I'll tell you who's dumb there. It's not Google. And it's because people don't realize that fundamentally, I mean, you have to still be patient and persistent and make it your own when you're doing Chop.
Yeah.
So you have multiple questions round trips with the LLM, right? People aren't doing that, right? They're not doing that. But fundamentally, I mean, prompt engineering and I'm not scared. If you go back and look at seriously, you go back and look at my chat history in Gemini, in Claude, and in ChatGPT, you'll see that I am ramping up on new domains right there in place as I'm coding. Haven't used WebSockets in 12 years. Let's go through the fundamentals again, right? Oh man, I haven't used Windows in 15 years. Walk me through how I install it. I mean, literally anything that you want to know, you literally ask the LLM while you're coding. And so everything that you're doing becomes this it's in a blender. It's blurred together. You're working and doing all the things that you need with the assistance of your coding assistant, your LLM, and you're cranking out a bunch of code, but you're not the one writing most of it. Do you guys do this?
There's like a bit of a cycle for me as well, where at some point I was kind of like, that meme of like, can't tell if the LLM is really bad or I'm just really bad at prompting the LLM, and usually I think it's the latter. Yeah. So it took me a while, I think, to learn like, oh yeah, I need to, really be strategic. And then I think to your point, like in terms of reducing red lights, one thing I really realized was like, oh, if my prompt is bad, I can just ask the LLM to improve the prompt. I think that was like the biggest unlock, where I was like, oh shit, this is like way better than what I would have asked it. So yeah, it's been pretty big.
Yeah, I read papers on prompt engineering, all the time, and that's a new one, right? It's rephrase and expand. I think you tell it, and you get a better prompt. But what I found, honestly, truthfully, is that I get good results without resorting to special prompt engineering techniques. The models are good enough now that just a regular conversation with the right context gives it everything that it needs. And the context arguably is more important than the prompt. That's just in my opinion, because it's going to get you want prompt engineering, you want it to be really, really, really good if it's doing some very specific task for you. Of course, you want the prompt to be really good. Like if it's the right unit test prompt, we're going to put a lot of work into that. But for solving any given random problem that you're doing during the day, it's a throwaway prompt. Mm-hmm. So you don't really need to put that much effort into it. And instead, what you got to do is you just got to recognize that some of the time it's going to just make stuff up. And you'd be like, no, that's made up. And it'll be, oh, apologies for the confusion, or whatever they tell it to say these days, right? But you just steamroll past that. You're like, nope, that didn't work. Nope, that didn't work, until the thing does the thing that you want. And if it starts to go into that circle, you mentioned this, sometimes it'll start giving you the run around, and you realize the model cannot make any forward progress. Just treat it like a chess match, right? If you hit the same position like 3 times, it's stalemate. Go take the whole conversation and take it to the next LLM over, right? Just go in a circle and say, this LLM's having a lot of trouble. And the other LLM would be like, they sure are. Here's your problem. And they'll tell it all to you, right? It's so cool. It's kind of like the magic property of second hashing, right? Secondary hashing. The second hash function almost never, ever, ever has a collision. Just because of the odds. And it's just awesome that you can go to a second LLM and pretty much always get the answer that you were missing the first time around.
Oh, I've never tried that.
You go a third LLM.
Interesting. I need to try that. Oh, very cool.
Dude, this is a chop technique. There's a bunch of it. I'm starting to do some videos on it and whatever. It's like, there's an art to it.
Should do a post on chop techniques, I think. That'll be super helpful for a lot of people out there.
That is one of my completed drafts that needs to be rewritten to be funnier. But yeah, it's ready to go.
Awesome.
Nice.
So one thing that you mentioned, there is a lot more engineering to this now, to building AI products. I was curious. Yeah. Generally, when you talk to a lot of people who are not building AI products, are software engineers, they also have this FOMO of like, hey, kind of missing out. But I'm not a machine learning engineer. And they may not have the right opportunity either at their own job, or they can't find one these days because it's generally harder. But just to put things in context, building AI products at this point, where you're not necessarily training an LLM yourself, but let's say you're building something like Cody, how much engineering work is that versus how much researchy work is that?
You get to decide where to turn that dial. I mean, it is a dial, and I mean, look, and why is that the case? It's because there is sort of like infinite low-hanging fruit in the space right now. I mean, really low-hanging fruit. Like we're like even just, I think 2 weeks ago I was in Krakow in Poland we did a hackathon, a Europe hackathon, right? And I realized one of our teammates, we were chatting, and we realized that nobody has gone and fixed our chunking for embeddings, and it's been a year, and we still don't. Like, an embedding will literally, like, the chunk will be from the middle of one function to the middle of another function, which is just totally useless for the LLM, right? Just low hanging fruit, right? So of course we fixed that. Yes, sorry, but and we have lots of other things besides embeddings that can get us indexes. But you get the idea, right? It's just like the road is so clearly set out for you. It's so obvious what to do. There's too much to do, and so you got to decide. Okay, all right, how are we going to allocate our resources? This is a strategic sort of battle. Early on in the game, like last year, I thought we were going to like really double down hard on on the AI side, and we've got a great AI team, and they're doing great stuff, with fine tuning and eliminating bias from models, and they've got a trained context ranker, because what we found ultimately was the biggest bang for the buck that you get in the coding assistant space, aside from the LLM itself. Okay, the biggest bang for the buck you're going to get is it's not the fine-tuning models, right? It's not the prompt engineering. It's your context. Okay, it's because you get a lot of tokens. You don't get anywhere near enough, but you get enough to put a lot of context in there, right? And even if you're doing raw chop without a coding assistant, if you can just shovel screenshots and paste in logs and stuff, right? That context means everything. Because every time you talk to the LLM, and I think people have trouble getting their heads around this, every time you're calling a phone like around the world, and this person's never met you before. Hi, I'm a programmer, and you got to explain your problem to them and give them all the context that they can give you the answer every single time. Which is why coding assistants are actually so useful in this game. Yeah.
So you had this blog post, cheating is all you need. I think it came out sometime last year. Again, one of the other amazing blog posts. We'll link it in the show notes and recommend people check it out. You had this very simplified diagram of how Cody works, which could be a diagram for any coding assistant for that matter. It's like you have a human developer on one side, you have the assistant in the middle, and then you have an LLM, and you have some source that is giving you embeddings, search, etc. And you tie all of this together.
In short, RAG. It is the RAG.
How much of that has changed since then?
How much of it has changed?
Or,
okay, so
like in other words, yeah, go ahead.
RAG is still big. Everybody's doing RAG. RAG is well known and acknowledged to be the right way, right? Because fundamentally, you got to pick the right context to put into the LLM, and that's the goal of RAG, which is to use basically local searches. Now, it's definitely expanded in terms of like the techniques and the approaches and things that go into RAG, right? A customer of ours introduced me to a really, really interesting new kind of source code index, for example, that I think we can bring in. I got to go write it up. It's just mind bending. And, so, I mean, like people are innovating like crazy in this space. Yeah. So fundamentally it hasn't changed. So then you got to ask the question, well, if they're all doing the same thing, like how is your coding assistant differentiated from the others? Right. And to some extent, we thought we were going to maybe differentiate on like local AI, smaller models, like we do with our context ranking. So to the extent that you can do that with RAG, yeah, we can differentiate, and we are. But for the most part, the effect of the actual foundation models in each generation is so overwhelming compared to the other stuff that you're doing that you pretty much just got to decide, like, okay, how am I going to ride this train to maximize value for ultimately myself? I'm building this for me, right? But for programmers. And yeah, what we've decided is that chat is the future. Chat is where it's at. Everybody's been so focused so narrowly on completion.
Oh yeah.
And I never understood it.
Completion rate.
And completion acceptance rate and all that, right? It's just been, the industry's been obsessed with it. And completions are like, they're okay. I mean, they're kind of gimmicky, right? I mean, you're coding along, all of a sudden it goes, blah, and it finishes it for you, and you're like, dang, that's pretty clever, But that's not, I mean, like most of what you're doing. And most of the time you're not doing code that's conducive to completions or in a way that they would help. Whereas if you could, and plus it's hard to guide the completions. You get into this mode where you're like putting comments into the code and hoping it picks up on the comments, and right.
Yes.
So like there's clearly what you need is sort of like prompted completions, right? Which we have with inline edits, which is a really cool feature where you just make these changes to the code and it'll do it, which is sort of like a directed completion. And we're even working on some modalities kind of between those two, like super completions, right? Things like that. But man, completion, they're almost a niche compared to how often you use chat. Once you realize that chat covers all phases of programming, right? From the generation of the code to the fixing of the code and the diagnosis and the troubleshooting and every part of the life cycle, chat can help you with it and accelerate you. And at that point, completions just fade into this gimmicky background. And I think most people haven't made that transition yet, but they will over the next 6 months, and they're going to realize, oh, wow, the coding assistants that focused on chat are the ones that are going to help me the most. And that's what you're going to find.
So you mentioned this in your blog post too, like after ChatGPT 4.0 and Claude 3.5 Sonnet, we saw this huge jump in the performance of coding assistants.
We did.
And like just the understanding of the code base, you could ask them to do complex things. Like at times I've asked it to refactor certain methods. And before this, you could try, I don't know how many loops with how many LLMs, and they would just not make progress. But now it's been very different. Not exactly how amazing. Either my prompts are really bad or LLMs aren't that great. One of the two, but they're not exactly where you want it to be. But in terms of the improvements that we are seeing and some aspects that you mentioned, like focusing more on chat than auto completion, there is an aspect of your foundational capabilities are just improving by so much, and there's a step function improvement with every new foundational model. And on top of that, now you're differentiating with features, because models in a way are commoditized to an extent. Everyone has access to it over an API. So then how do you leverage that model becomes a differentiator? So it goes back to regular product building fundamentals, how easy it is to use. Are you providing the right things at the right time to the user when they need it? So a lot of the improvements that we see today, apart from the models, what else do you think plays a role right now? And how do you envision this would be better?
I'm really glad you asked that. I almost could have prompted you to ask this. So I think that the piece that I'm most interested in, because obviously the models are going to continue getting better and better, and the tools are all going to continue sort of like copying each other and converging, as tools will do, right? So the piece that I think that's really critical, that's missing, that everybody needs really desperately, and they're asking us for, and we're making good progress, is the platform. You knew I was going to bring up platforms at some point. And so to me, the real value in Cody is that we are building it as a platform. I mean, the internal, the guts are very platformy. And so we've got a command line tool you can use to integrate with your workflows. And we've got sort of like a set of curated platform APIs for connecting clients, but also for connecting your own context. We've got an open context protocol, and like there's so many surfaces, right? Because you've got to bring in all of your personal context, your wikis, your private code, whatever. You may have your own personal model. So Cody also becomes a clearinghouse for you to like mix and match what you want. Like, because we got users and customers that really love one particular model or another for whatever reason. And a lot of coding assistants, they're pretty much a bundled deal. Like you don't have to think, and it's great. They give you a model, and that's the model you get. And if for people who just want to like just start going, they're great. They're fine. But if you want a little bit of control over it, if you're the kind of person that builds your own PC, you know, you want to like build your own tools, your own personal, if you're the kind of person that like has a bin directory with scripts in it, and you like to, you know, like tinker with your tools to make yourself even faster, then I think you're really going to like Cody, because we're building it for that kind of user. It's actually a necessity because enterprises have such whack requirements, right? So you kind of have to build it as a platform.
What are some of the use cases do you see that could be built on top of the platform that are probably not as obvious to many people?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, like, there's some of them are kind of feel like science fiction, but I'm sure we're gonna get there anyway.
Oh, sure.
Right?
All of this was science fiction 3 years ago.
Right? Yeah, right. I think the holy grail is batch. right? You got to be able to basically like run the LLM. You got to be able to drag the LLM's nose through all of your code.
Yes.
Okay. And right. So what we do now is we do it at entry and ingress and egress, right? We're like, okay, a PR just came in, have the LLM look at it, and see if, do the linting or whatever else. And that's great. So that when codes, and you stopped the bleeding basically, like codes that are in your code. But what about all that existing code, right? That's the holy grail. Our product actually has a really cool batch engine. It's similar to one that Google built internally that Google really should have open sourced. It's called Rosie, but they didn't because they never do. And it's pretty cool to be able to like know everybody that you're about to break, right? At least in the open source world, and be able to like even go and refactor them and send them a pull request saying, I'm about to break you, but if you accept this PR, you'll see that it fixes you. That's nuts. Okay, being able to do that.
Yeah.
Now imagine being able to do that with Cody. Imagine being able to do that with AI, right? Because now, it can do, these things can do remarkable things. You can basically give it high-level instructions for a file, and it'll go ahead and port it or whatever it is that you need to do. So yeah, that's the holy grail. When do we get there? I don't know. There's so much to focus. It's like I told you got to pick where to turn that dial. We've got people chasing the AI side because that's important. Yeah. We've got people on the context. We've got people making the clients really, really, slick and good. And we've got people, working on the mixing and matching of, services and models in the back end. We're spread thin. Everybody's spread thin, and we just hope that we're making choices that are going to make the most people the happiest. That's where it is right now.
So, one of the aspects you mentioned, like the holy grail of being the batch, like today, if you think about LLMs or many of these coding assistants, they're essentially assistants, and I think you said it well. They're safer in the hands of a senior engineer. I was probably going to go where you just already prompted it. It's like you don't know when it comes. But the thing that I was thinking about is it would be really nice to have not a coding assistant, but a coding partner of sorts where it works on your instructions, but you trust its output as if you would of a senior engineer. So the part about that you said on the legacy code or the existing code base, and I think that's where a lot of value lies too, and I would say majority of the organizations struggle there. We know there's a lot of code which is dead in many cases. No one goes and cleans it up. Sometimes you want to do a big refactor, and just updating libraries of all the clients is extremely painful in a large code base. Being able to do such operations which require chain of thought, breaking tasks down into pieces, but then executing over hours or days sometimes. Is this a direction where coding assistants would eventually go in your perspective?
Dude, your whole question was tainted with the T word. You said trust. There's no trust, right? And so when that happens, because it will happen, somebody's going to have to go through every single step of it and validate it, right? We're going to be was it Lenin, trust but verify? Or was it Khrushchev? I don't know. So that's where we're at now, right? It's don't trust and verify. That's where we're at.
Reagan, trust but verify.
So yeah, that validation, it happens in the small when you're doing CHOP. You validate it yourself. Yeah. Your IDE can provide you a very quick feedback loop because you dump it in and it goes, that doesn't compile or that API doesn't exist, and you're like, right? But there's larger feedback loops, larger and larger ones that go all the way out to production and then come all the way back via some logs or whatever. And those things, they're going to get looked at by models that are trying to do those kinds of things, workflows. And it's going to be just like CHOP is right now, which I wish more of you were doing it. And I'm doing some videos, but basically it is an assistant and you're still doing the work, and you need to make sure you're the, like if you build guitars or cars or whatever in your garage, right, you can bring in assistants. And you can train them up, but ultimately it's your guitar, it's your car, right? You got to make sure that the right things happen. And assistants drop stuff, right? So I would never get out of that mindset. I know you want a partner. I know you want someone you can trust. You're not going to get it, okay? Settle for an assistant for now.
Helps me keep my job in a way, so.
It is job security, absolutely. And you know what? Despite the doom and gloom, nature of the, obviously I had a provocative title in my blog, but I mean, like, you can do that validation yourself as a junior engineer, right? Because it'll spit out a bunch of stuff and it seems plausible, but you can use other tools like other LLMs or compilers or whatever to go in and do the valid tests to do the validation that you need to see, yeah, it did work. Now you're going to miss things, probably like, it's inefficient or whatever, something that it did that it didn't need to, right? If you're a junior engineer, but if it meets the basic spec, right? So I mean, I don't think it's all doom and gloom for junior engineers at all. They're just going to have to get really, really good at validating.
And you're saying eventually you would have models which would also help you validate. So keep feeding.
Yeah,
It's basically
right.
Unix. You pipe from one end to the other.
I mean, as soon as you start doing a set of validations that's the same, like every
Yeah.
time, then you need to train them. You need to embed that whole thing, right? Train a model that knows how to do that. And, yeah.
So chop is definitely a useful skill, and not everyone is doing it. And even the people who are, some are better than others.
Mm-hmm.
Do you evaluate for this in interviews anymore, or at all? Not anymore.
Oh my goodness. No, we haven't started asking it as an interview. It's too new, right? That's interesting. And I mean, we fundamentally we would still be asking people. That would be like asking people, "Can you type?" Like we might ask people some prompt engineering questions, like just to see if they have any common sense about it, I guess. But mostly, yeah, you always still focus on fundamentals, right? Computer science, timeless stuff, ideally in interviews.
And in terms of hiring junior developers versus senior developers, this is at least a shift that I see at LinkedIn, and I think it's probably true across the industry right now, where overall there are fewer positions open, and the ones that are for experienced engineers. And when I say experienced, I like how you described it, where a person who has an idea of what needs to be done, has a framework of how they would do it, and they can control the LLM in this case. Do you see that affecting productivity of organizations that you speak with?
You mean the
The
shift
shift,
towards
yeah,
more senior?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sure, yeah, they're getting more productive, but what that's short-term gains, right? What long-term consequences are we going to reap from not hiring enough junior engineers?
We
Right?
become
Companies tend to get
dinosaurs.
a little bit short-sighted. I mean, like, have you ever been in a company where everybody there was, like retirement age? I've, been around companies like that. It happens, and it's really, really difficult. It's at that point you've got Japan's problem,
Yeah.
right? It's at some point it's kind of not reversible. But yeah, you gotta have young people entering into the workforce and learning this stuff. So continue doubling down on that and hiring junior people, and then just I don't know. I think we're just going to have to figure out like a new workflow. Like, there's been a lot of people suggesting that maybe the junior folks can crank out a lot of the work, and senior folks can kind of like more do that second level of vetting. But I haven't seen anybody fall into that yet. Most people are just everybody's working as hard as they can, and nobody's planning for the future. It's just such a big race.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a huge problem.
And there is this thing called Devin. There's a company called Cognition.ai. I'm curious if you have seen it. What's your take on it?
I didn't see the demo. I heard people talking about it, but I don't think it comes down to the T word again,
Keyword.
trust. Right? I ain't going to trust agents until they're trustworthy. Not a jot before then, which means I'm not going to be an early adopter of them unless they have a mode that allows me to use the agent as an assistant, where it does part of the job and then I tell it where it went wrong with chat, and then it continues the job. If they can do that, like human in the loop, driving it along and steering it, then I think they'll land a lot faster and people will trust them a lot faster. But my suspicion is that they're chasing investor dollars, and so they're trying to do something that's hitting home runs, and they're not going to hit it. Not in the next year, 18 months, I don't think. But I've been wrong before.
So similar to coding assistants, there is another aspect that engineers care about, which is understanding how the existing code works. And you mentioned batch in case of Cody and Sourcegraph. Is it a direction which you're pursuing where one could ask questions of the code to understand how it works. And I recently saw a demo, I forget the name, but they had this thing called, which would basically generate a wiki out of a open source code base. So I could just go and say, how does React work, or how does Kubernetes work, or aspects of it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. This is an idea. This is the idea I mentioned earlier in the talk that one of our customers pitched to us, and they actually got it from Google via another customer of Google's. So this is spreading. What you're talking about is I view. Look, it was hard for me to get my head around it, but I view it as a new kind of source code index that's complementary to a search index or a graph, right, that a compiler would build, or embeddings, any sort of index, right? They all have different, strengths. There is a new kind of index emerging, which is generated by LLMs, and it's a semantic index. And I think they're going to have incredible potential. I know some people who are building them now. We will be looking at them for sure. I'm excited about that direction, but that is smoking hot new.
that would be amazing, by the way. Like, wikis and docs get out of date. This would be pretty neat.
This customer spent a whole afternoon educating me about it. Why? Because they didn't want to build it, right? They wanted me to build it, which kind of makes sense, right? Because it's kind of rad. So yeah, I'm getting chills. This is a new direction, right? It's so weird. You're basically building this document store, this semantic index that doesn't have to be human readable. It just has all of the semantics that are unpackable by LLMs. And then you can have business owners who can't look at the code necessarily. And they can be going into legacy code bases of 20 million lines of COBOL or whatever, that your company doesn't even understand anymore, but you're dependent on it. And they can go in and actually start making like informed, not just questions, but potentially even the company can start doing refactorings now that are like tractable when they weren't tractable before. And trust me, I know a lot of you out there that have intractable migration problems right now, trying to get your monolith split up or whatever. Like, this is going to be a game changer for that.
A teeny tiny benefit of this would be developers getting less pings from their managers about how does this thing work. They could just go ask the
it is one of many benefits that this structure has, and I'm just it was weird. It's like a discovery. You start realizing this is an inevitability. Like, people are all going to figure this out. Is use the LLM to explain all the code in great detail, and then now how it works in ways that you just couldn't before. Now, how to build that index is still a wide open question. What's the format of the index? What's the granularity? Do you run it at the function level, the file level, the module level, the graph level? We'll see, right? But it's really cool that a lot of people are innovating on this right now.
And a lot of developments we see right now are on the left side of the developer's cycle, in a way, which is code assistance to help them develop code, or this summarization in a way, or the code understanding semantics of the system, and then helping you understand how it works. There is this entire world of things on the right side, which is when system is running in production. And you can't reason about a system, especially in the service-oriented architecture, where you have like 2,000 things talking to each other at any time, with configurations in somewhere else, secrets somewhere else, and they are just connected via this network. Do you see any movements on that side which would help one understand their production environment better?
I'm sure there's like startups and stuff doing that, but we view that as a subset of the context problem. Like, companies came to us and immediately they were like, oh, Cody can index all our stuff and then we can ask questions about it. Then can we throw our wiki in there? And we're like, yeah. And they're like, well, can we throw our issue tracker in there? And we're like, yeah. And all of a sudden they want everything in there, the logs and whatever, right? And so that's why I said we're building a platform and with an open context that allows you very simply to basically like allow other context to get put into your workflow. It doesn't have to be a query. It can be a CI/CD workflow that you're building, right?
Oh, that's super.
Those platform hooks are, they're going to be huge.
Okay, I completely missed then what you meant by platform, because this is fascinating. So essentially, Cody's, while the way you interact with it is through the coding assistant interface or the chat interface in your IDE, but the context it has is beyond just the code in the repo. So you're saying
it is. It's negotiating. You can mention URLs and stuff, so you can slurp down. Now in Cody, right? It's actually quite. it's funny. It's not the way we thought it was going to go. And our AI people are a little bit indignant, just a little bit, right? Because they're like, well, technically, you shouldn't have to figure this out. The model should be able to figure this out. And I'm like, well, there's your operative word, should. All right. So why don't we just go ahead and work with reality, which is that we need control over the context. We need to be able to sling it around like gunslingers. I mean, slice it, dice it, prune it, go back and rewrite it, edit history. Your conversation becomes the dynamic context, right? That's going to help you solve your problem, whatever it is. And so, yeah, you need full editing ability to go back and rewrite that thing, And we decided to go down that path with our AI people kind of running after us to try to, model it, right? Yeah. And that's given us just tremendous flexibility. That's what I mean by platform. We can integrate on many different surfaces. We can integrate on the model, the back end. We can integrate your context. We can integrate like at the repo level or like with your particular tools. That's a lot of work, right? It's like 3 times as much work to build it that way, but right? Because then people can build stuff like what we just talked about, like that magical document store, and integrate it into your tools. And this is why I'm telling people that the growth is exponential. That it's only been 18 months since GPT 3.5 came out, or whatever, through GPT 4, and that's kind of garbage compared to what we have today. The next 18 months isn't going to be, like as much as happened before. It's going to be significantly more than happened in the last 18 months because we're growing exponentially. So it's a little bit dizzying, actually. But man, is it exciting. Now do you see why I'm saying this time of my life? Seriously. I think everybody should they should be jumping on this.
So you mentioned earlier that while building Cody and also using Cody, it has surprised you in ways where it acted in a way you didn't anticipate it to act that way. Are there any specific instances that you can recall where it surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, just sometimes it just has you feel like it has no business knowing what it figured out, right? And this happens a lot, especially because Cody does a lot of magical context fetching for you. You can see it. You can open it up and look at which ones it picked, right? It'll rank them. It pulls some out of the embed. It'll embed your query and see if it can come up with some relevant stuff that way. And it'll do a search and it'll check our graph and so on. And sometimes that context is completely irrelevant. We need to work on it. And sometimes it's so relevant that even with like it's incomplete, and you look at it and you're like, actually, even like a senior engineer probably shouldn't have been able to figure that out. And yet here the LLM generated the right code. Maybe it's just really good at guessing, right? But I mean, in the end, if it's doing the right thing, I'm still regularly blown away by these things.
So I don't build AI products, so this question might be a dumb question, but I was just trying to visualize in my head in terms of how this thing functions. Visualizing things makes it easier for me to understand stuff. So you have this model in one place, which is the core LLM. Call it GPT-4o, Claude 3.5 Sonnet, something else. Yeah. You have Cody in the front, and then context, you said, is where the magic happens, or that's the differentiator.
Yep.
Cody can pull context from different places. Now, context here, tell us a little more about what that looks like. So I'm just imagining in one case you have all of your source code, in one case you have your wikis. And this is something I see when I just search on Sourcegraph. By the way, Sourcegraph search is outstanding. That's my go-to place to search code. I've recommended it to most of my teammates I work with. Anyway, so in that case, it says something like search-based. It'll actually show that tag. But in terms of fetching this context, can you elaborate a little more on what that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a one-size-fits-all problem, right? It's domain specific. So if you're generating unit tests, your context is going to be, your company's testing style guide, whatever framework classes you're using, maybe some examples of tests that are particularly representative of how you want them to be written in your organization. So we actually allow for things like this by allowing you to put in pinned context and, having administrators actually point in context that everybody's going to be using all the time for specific use cases. You can do custom prompts basically and build up a prompt library so that, because the prompt can help bring in some of the context as well or interpret it. And then it's going to be a completely different set of context for the use case that you brought up in your earlier question about how do you debug in production, right? And the answer is the LLM can use tools and it can read and interpret the output of tools. And so, our context there is, what information can we get out of prod that we can get in front of the LLM? And since they're multimodal, maybe that's as desperate as doing a screenshot, but hey, right? That may work too. So context can be anything. Context is context. It's literally like it is defining the problem. So it's the most fundamental thing.
So in the RAG part of this equation, this is the retrieval part. And how much of the classical search techniques apply to this part? Or is this part also very different nowadays?
It's very similar, actually. Like if you think about Google search, right, it's not one back end. It's not one size fits all, just like this AI domain, right? If you're searching for baseball cards, there's going to be a very specific set of, things in your query that are very different from if you're searching for, a pet store. And so there's going to be a bunch of back ends, hundreds or even thousands of models that all report back on what they think the relevant answer to context for your query is, search results say. And then somebody has to go and arbitrate, right, those answers and multiplex them. And that's where some of our key differentiation is we're not just a context fetching engine, we're a context assembly engine. And that there's an art to that as well, right? Because it's a bin packing problem. Yeah.
So for someone who has some knowledge or experience with information retrieval systems or search in general, I can see them transitioning into the space relatively easily. What are some of the other transferable skills in terms of software engineering to just building AI products?
Typing. Right? Because if you're doing chat-oriented programming, that means you got to chat. And so if you're really a slow typist, you're going to be frustrated. You're going to be the bottleneck, right? Although it would be great, if we could. I think it's finally time for speech to text to really shine. Yeah. We need to get it wired up so that you can talk and type and whatever at the same time.
That'll be fun.
That was slightly tongue in cheek. I get it, but but yeah, in terms of software engineering, I would say, look, the skills are the same, but for my entire career, the low-level skills have been becoming obsolete one after another as we level up. Okay, so when I started, in college, we were literally using put pixel, to put a colored pixel on the screen, and we would do our own Z buffering and whatever to build 3D graphics. And by the time I graduated from college, it had already gotten to animation courses. It was accelerating that fast, right? And at some point, we didn't need to know how to render polygons and do Bresenham's algorithm anymore, right? And because it's down in the hardware. And this steady march of pushing software down into the hardware layer over and over again has meant that we've been focusing on higher and higher and higher level things. There's still computer sciencey things, and there's still things you still have to understand algorithms and data structures and big O complexity and all that. You have to, right? But the specifics of technologies that are staples, I don't know, do you need to know relational databases anymore? Maybe not for long. If LLMs know everything about relational databases and all you need to do is tell them what you need, right? You're going to need somebody to go in and fix it. One person on staff. Again, this is the problem, right? But yeah.
So we're coming towards the end of our conversation. And so in one of your YouTube posts, you mentioned that having something to truly push up a mountain is fulfilling. We like struggle, and struggle is necessary for life. You've had a very successful career. Over this period, what have been some of the struggles that you are most proud of?
Am I the most proud of?
Which have been most fulfilling in a way?
Yeah. I guess one that I would love to do is almost like a PSA is your mental health is really, really an important resource that I think that maybe so I'm Gen X and we don't talk about that stuff ever. Okay. It's yeah, did you see the football game? Yeah, that's as close as we ever get to talking about mental health and sharing in my generation. All right. But I learned the hard way, like wrestling with the innovator's dilemma, head on. Very, very difficult problem. My mental health really, really took a hit, and I learned how important it is. And that was a huge struggle, right? To get better, you know what I mean? Like, and get back to my jolly old self, it was not an easy thing. And so I want people to, especially the older programmers, to recognize that, yeah, stuff can get so hard that you need to go get help. So there's a struggle I'm proud of telling you about. Does that count?
Yeah, that totally counts. It totally counts. Steve, this has been an amazing conversation. We highly encourage people to check out all of your blog posts. We'll link to them in the show notes. And we learned a lot through this conversation, and I'm sure all of our listeners will too. Not only learn, they'll find it entertaining. So thank you so much again for joining the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Steve.
Awesome.
All right, guys.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to the show. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and learn more about us at softwaremisadventures.com. You can also write to us at hello@softwaremisadventures.com. We would love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.